And it resonates with him. It's exactly what his father believed. And so he sits down with gratitude, tears stream down his face, and he accepts what? Christianity? Well, yes and no. What Jeremiah Wright represents is what could be called third world liberation theology. It's not black liberation theology. In fact, when everybody kept calling Jeremiah Wright a race guy, if you actually look at his appearance on Hannity, his speech at the press club, Jeremiah Wright kept saying, "You have me all wrong. This is not about being black." He goes, there are resistance movements all over the world. The Sandinistas, the Libyans, the third world guerrillas, the people fighting in El Salvador, the people fighting in Asia. He goes, that's who I'm for. Those are my people. This is the anti-colonial ideology as applied to religion. Traditional Christianity is anathema. It's the opposite of this. Why? Because it's identified with the colonizers. As I mentioned, when the white man went to the Americas, the conquistadors came with the missionaries. And the missionaries are seen as reflecting traditional Christianity. By the way, I tell you this not only to help understand why Obama had an affinity with right, but we're seeing with Obama now the emergence of a cultural radicalism that we didn't see before. A kind of aggression on issues like gay rights, gay marriage, gays in the military, abortion. Something I spoke recently at a prayer breakfast of the United Nations. There were a number of ambassadors of small countries, and a number of them came up to me afterward and said, "Do you realize that the United States is basically putting us up against the wall and saying, either you change your laws with regard to marriage and homosexuality, or no foreign aid for you." And they said, wait a minute, this has never happened before, not under Clinton. This is something very new. This is where the United States is actually becoming the symbol of a kind of cultural imperialism and imposing its own permissive view, so to speak, on other countries that want to have more traditional views. And so all of this is going on under Obama. Not being reported very well, not being reported in many cases at all. But I'm trying to suggest an explanation for why he's doing it. As you know this better in Alaska than anywhere else perhaps, Obama has been doing his best to block oil drilling in America. And I'm thinking here not just about the moratorium, I'm not just thinking about the Canadian Keystone Pipeline, I'm not just thinking about the EPA redefining what is pollution or refusal to issue permits. We know about all that. And the general explanation for all this is that Obama is selling out or is being pressured by the environmental lobby. So this is sort of like saying Obama's kind of like Al Gore. So here's Al Gore. The earth has a fever, right? Global warming. And Al Gore's idea is that everybody is using way too much carbon. Our carbon footprint is too great in the world. What's the solution? We have to all cut back our carbon footprint. Humanity, all of us. But interestingly, that's not Obama's view. Obama has actually been actively promoting oil drilling in other countries. And so, in recent years, through the Export-Import Bank, we gave a $1 billion loan to Mexico to drill for oil. And we gave a $2.5 billion loan to the nation of Colombia to drill for oil. And we have given loans amounting to over $3 billion in total to Brazil to drill for oil. Not for the oil to come to America, but for the oil to stay in Brazil, and the Brazilians are selling most of it to the Chinese. Recently, Obama went to Brazil and he said, "We're thrilled to be helping you drill for oil, and we hope to be one of your best customers." And lots of people who heard that said, we could be drilling for that oil over here, and it could be creating jobs over here. Now, this is not Al Gore environmentalism, but I would submit that if you insert the anti-colonial explanation, things will begin to make a lot more sense. The basic anti-colonial view is that the whole ship of the world has been wrong side up for 500 years. One culture, first Europe and now America, is on top. And that's wrong. That's unnatural. What needs to be done is the whole ship of the world has to be set right side up. Obama is the restorer. And that means that when it comes to drilling, the previously colonized countries need to have more. And the cost has to be paid by the colonizers. So we should use less so that they can have more. The weird thing about Obama is he says this all the time. His favorite phrase, one of his favorite phrases, repeated more than any other in his presidency, is, we have 2% of the world's oil and we use 25%. Obama, by the way, said that very prominently in the speech that followed the oil spill. Now, factually, it's true. But if you think about it, what relevance does it have to an oil spill? I mean, let's say we use 2% of the world's oil and let's say we have 2% of the world's oil and we consume 10%. What difference would it make? But Obama is obsessed with this idea that we, like a locust, are consuming a share of the world's resources greatly out of proportion to what is our due. And Obama's energy policy is aimed at reducing American consumption in order to provide those same resources to other countries. I'm not saying this is the accidental byproduct. I'm saying this is the actual deliberate goal of Obama's policies. I'll give a final example because I think it's very relevant to what's happening today on the foreign policy front. The Arab Spring. We have seen in the last 2 years major uprisings in a whole bunch of Muslim countries. Tunisia, Bahrain, Libya, Egypt, and so on. Syria, earlier in Iran. Now here's the interesting thing. Obama's reaction, if you watch it, has been extremely schizophrenic. In some countries, he's actively involved and even uses force. In other countries, he's weirdly detached, refuses to use force. What is the principle of selectivity that explains why Obama intervenes over here, but not over there? It's nothing to do with oil, because there's a lot of oil all over there. It's nothing to do with being Muslims, because all those guys are Muslims. Something else is going on. Let's look more closely. So in Libya, the only country where Obama was fairly quick to use massive force. NATO, US planes, bombing, and so on. Now you might say, well, what does Libya have to do with our national interest? Almost nothing. Obama says, we've got to intervene. There's a genocide coming in Libya. Number of people killed in Libya when America begins to use force, under 250. By contrast, over the past year and a half in Syria, some 10,000 people have been killed, according to the United Nations, in mass uprisings that are going on every day and as we speak. Obama flatly refuses to use force or help the rebels. Recently, he agreed to send some military equipment and what the White House calls communications equipment, which is basically a handful of walkie-talkies. America has stayed out of the Syria issue pretty much completely. In Egypt, Obama was involved. He actually was involved in two ways. First, he intervenes with the US military to push out the dictator Mubarak. And the military comes to power. But as soon as the military comes to power, Obama abandons them and supports the man on the street calling for free elections in Egypt. And today, the free elections have been won by a whole coalition of radical Muslim groups, with the Muslim Brotherhood, the oldest organization of radical Islam, being the most moderate of those groups. The other groups are all more radical than the Muslim Brotherhood. In Iran, a year earlier, there were massive uprisings bigger than Tahrir Square. 1 million people in Iran protesting against an Iranian election and demanding that the mullahs step down. Obama's reaction? No reaction. In fact, he counsels the world not to intervene. He says, we must be patient. There is a debate going on in Iran. We should see how it comes out. Debate? You turn on CNN, you see the military police hitting people on the head with truncheons. This is the debate. Well, the debate ends. All these guys are rounded up and jailed or worse, and the Iranian uprising subsides. And so, I repeat my question. What explains why Obama intervenes here, but not there? To my knowledge, no commentator, liberal or conservative, has given any plausible explanation to account for this to date. However, I think we can explain it in a minute. Just ask yourself this question. What do the guys that Obama has pushed out have in common? And what do the guys that Obama has refused to push out have in common? It turns out that the guys that Obama has pushed out were both working with the United States. Mubarak was our closest ally in the region, not counting Israel. Huge friend of America. Gaddafi, not exactly a friend of America, used to be kind of a third world thug, but since 2002, after America invaded Iraq, Gaddafi has been, you may say, a third world despot on best behavior. He's been handing over the names of terrorists. He outed the Pakistani spy A.Q. Khan. He's paid reparations to the Lockerbie bomber. Even the UN took him off the despised list. Gaddafi's been behaving himself. He's out, Mubarak's out. And we don't know what's happening in Libya, but we know in Egypt there's a government there that's much more anti-American, much more anti-Israel than was there before. What does Syria and Libya have in common, and Iran, the two places where Obama would not intervene, what do they have in common? They are the sworn and deadly enemies of the United States, and they are allies of each other. So, Iran funds terrorism through Syria, Iran funds Hezbollah, and of course the Iranian regime is the most anti-American regime, not counting perhaps North Korea, in the world. So if the mullahs were to fall in Iran, we don't know what would come in its place, but you can be pretty sure it would be more pro-American than what was there before. Now, I need to sum up what I'm really saying, and what I'm not saying. What I'm not saying is, I'm not saying Obama hates America, Obama's a traitor. No. Obama doesn't hate America. He thinks it's really bad for America to be this colonial oppressor. Obama believes what he does because he subscribes to an ideology, a view of the world that sees the West in general and America in particular as the bad guy. This is what makes Obama different than traditional Democrats. So, traditional Democrats want to redistribute income in America. Obama, if I'm right, wants to realign America in the world. That's a totally different agenda. And it makes Obama do things and think of things in a very different way than people understand it. We talk about the 1% and the 99%. My office is right near the Occupy Wall Street, so I walk down there, kind of for anthropological reasons, check out this distant tribe that's out there. And I see all these guys, a lot of them college students, by the way, we're the 99%. And I'm thinking, you know what? In America, you probably are. But in the world, you're not. In the world, you are in the top 1%. Right. So the real question is, what's Obama thinking? If Obama's looking at the world, then a huge slice of America is going to be in the top 1%. Even poor people in America are rich by world standards. So sometimes when I describe what Obama's doing, people say, well, wait a minute. If you're right, it's even going to hurt poor people, and why would Obama do that? And my answer is, because they're not poor by world standards. So the argument I'm making, and it's open for you to think about and apply to the world, is that actually what Obama is about is a great global redistribution. It's about changing the shape of history. It's about reversing the last 500 years. And where the social issues come into it is that they are seen, issues like the traditional family, the traditional respect for life, the traditional affirmation of Christianity. These are seen as part of that oppressive infrastructure, the establishment. This is part of the colonial apparatus that was imposed on everybody else. So Dinesh, how did your family become Christian? Well, my family became Christian because we come from a part of India called Goa. And hundreds of years ago, the Portuguese missionaries came, hand in hand with the colonialists, with the Bible in one hand and the sword in the other. And if my ancestors can be believed, they were very persuasive. That's not how they became Christians. So, the bottom line of it is, I think that here in America, we're facing a very unusual situation. Because here we are on top of the world, and we have a president who I think would rather it not be that way. Very different than Bill Clinton